Good morning to everyone. We have already begun with a new chapter in history. That is where, when, and how. Right? And in this chapter, till now, whatever we have discussed about the modern period in history, which had begun in India with the arrival of the Britishers. Right? What kind of changes we have observed in the political field, in the social field, in the economical field, as well as in the cultural field, right? We'll be studying about those changes and what are the sources of information from which we get to know about these changes, right? Now, with the downfall of the Mughal emperor, right? With the downfall of the Mughal emperor and the way the Marathas have lost the Battle of Panipat, right? The Britishers finally established themselves as the supreme power in India, and India finally entered into an era of colonialization, 200 years of slavery under the British rule, because Mughals were the one who were defending, then Marathas were there with the with the not so good and not so intelligent successors. The Mughal emperor slowly and slowly fell into the trap of the Britishers. East India Company got established, and this trading company of Britishers slowly and slowly took over took over the political control of India, and finally established itself as the only supreme power in India. So, in India, the modern period begins with the establishment of British rule under the East India Company. With the establishment of British rule, several major changes and developments took place in the political, economic, social, and cultural life of India. With the coming of the British, new systems of administration, laws, and revenue collection were introduced in India. The purpose of the British rule was to colonize India, okay, to control Indian markets and to drain away wealth from India. They were not here to rule us for a good reason, right? They were here to colonize us, to take away all our resources, to economically drain India, right? So, whatever changes they were bringing, whether it was in the administrative field, whether they were implementing new laws or revenue collection, it was all done for the it was all done to bring profit to the British Empire, right? They were not doing anything in favor of Indians. Whatever revenue collection changes they were bringing, it was all because they wanted to give benefit to the British rule. British rule led to the exploitation of the peasants, artisans, and craftsmen, and ruined the handicraft industry of India, right? How did they ruin the industry of India? By bringing in the cheap machine made goods, right? Slowly and slowly, when these cheap machine made goods made way into the Indian market, a lot of small businessmen had suffered, right? And peasants and artisans, why were they suffering? They were suffering because they were under debt, right? They had to pay a lot of taxes. Naturally, the Indians protested against this colonial oppression, leading to the sporadic incidents of localized violence and finally the mass revolt of 1857. Major developments. Now, naturally, the Indians protested against this colonial oppression, leading to sporadic incidents of localized violence and finally mass revolt in 1857. During the British rule, India witnessed numerous social and cultural changes. The Western education and its far teaching impact left the utmost mark on the intelligentsia, means the intellectual, the high class of any society. So, Western education has made its way into India, and a lot of high class Indians, they were even attracted by the Western education. Also, yes, Britishers had bring up some rules, right? They got some rules which somewhere benefited that section of the society. and which somewhere were justified also. During the British rule, a number of social legislations were passed to prevent child marriage, sati, and female infanticide. So, this was something good they had done. Laws were passed to improve the condition of the widows and impart education to women. Indian reformers led to major protest against the social evil of caste system. Now, major developments. British rule gave rise to colonial cities like Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras. Why? Why did they give rise to these colonial cities? For the trading purpose, because these all were the port cities, right? And import and export could have been easy from these port cities. Import means bringing in the material, export means sending the material out of the country. The hill stations of India were developed during this period. Why? Because Britishers were Britishers liked cold environment. They were used to cold weather, right? So these hill stations were developed so that they can get relief from the heat of India. So these hill stations which we hear today, Dalhousie, Mussoorie, all these were developed by your Britishers to create a home-like environment of Europe. The most dynamic and challenging aspect of modern Indian history was the saga of the Indian national movement, where a wide number of groups like the Indian National Congress, the revolutionaries, the peasants, and the tribal groups challenged the British rule, following different kind of strategies. Now, definitely, yes, there were one or two changes which were beneficial for the society, but otherwise, Britishers were slowly draining away the resources of India. They were considering Indians and slaves, and they were treating Indians and slaves, right? Indians were being treated as slaves. A lot heavy taxes were being imposed, and we were not allowed to use our own resources. We didn't had any right on our own motherland. This led to revolutions, right? Revolutions from different sections of the society, leading to Indian national movement. Colonial period, as you know, many historians refer to the period of British as the colonial India. This is because India was a victim of colonial domination and exploitation. This period extends approximately from the middle of the 18th century up to India's independence. This period tells us how the British established their control over India's political and economic system, and how India's culture and society came under the influence of the British rule, excluding a few. This was a dynamic period also in the world history. Why in world history? Because if we were fighting for our freedom, if we were fighting for independence, there were other countries too where independence revolution was going on, right? Like in France, in Russia, there was American War of Independence, First and Second World War as well. Now I had given you one homework. Make a collage in a chain of events of how Britishers had finally taken control of India. Their history from a trader to being a colonizer in a chain form. Now, sources of information. Official records. Let's see. These are the three sources actually: official records, literary sources, surveys, and census. Now let's see what were these official records and why are we studying about these sources of information, because it's there from where we get to know about our past, about the slavery rule which India has gone through. So official records, the British maintained official records of all the major decisions, administrative policies, treaties and agreements that provide us with an authentic source of information. Literary sources, newspaper, magazines, novels, plays, journals, diaries, etc. are all our literary sources. We have numerous literary sources of this period. Paintings, photographs, maps, and statues also give us a glimpse of the society, administration, lifestyle, laws, and policies of the British and common Indian masses. Surveys and census. The British routinely conducted the surveys of landforms, people, villages, towns, and coastal regions to know about each and every aspect. Though They thought it important to govern India effectively. The census report gave us detailed information on caste, religion, occupation, and population growth. Means a lot of surveys were done, a lot of records were maintained of the population. Britishers used to, routinely conduct surveys on landforms, on people, on villages, just to have a proper control of India. So these are the three sources of information. Now, there are certain important terms like intelligentsia, the intellectual class of any society. So, social legislations, laws enacted to curb social evils prevailing in the society, means to stop, to put an end to social evils. Social evils like sati pratha, female infanticide, child marriage. These are considered to be social evils. Survey means to collect data to know about a country and other things in detail. Like often, a lot of people conducting survey come to your home. They ask you about how many family members are there, how many male, how many females are there. Why? Because they're conducting a survey. They're conducting a data about the people living in that particular area. So accordingly, they can plan up things, right? Topography, various landforms, reliefs, etc. Okay, class. So this was the chapter which was telling us about our history, about the starting of the modern history in India. Fine. So what you're going to do is you will go through these slides once again. All these slides one by one, you will thoroughly read it. You will go through your homework as well. And I want this homework positively. Right? Go through all these slides. If any query is there, note it down and you can ask me on your Zoom classes or you can ask me through your WhatsApp group. But there is a fixed timing to submit your homework, to submit your queries. That is 8 to 1:30. Anyone who is submitting homework after 1:30 will be blocked from the group. Right? So be cautious about timings. Thank you.